Hello and welcome back to my RC channel. I'm AndyRC and today I'm going to be checking out the ISDT Smart Control Discharger. Now, I know what you're thinking. If you know about this product already, then it's about a year old. And to be fair, I didn't know that it existed until recently. I've not had the need for a product like this, and that's because for the longest time I flew on my own. So I knew how many Lipos that I was going to fly that day, and I could charge that many. And anytime anyone asked me about lipo discharging, I would naively say, you've got a quadcopter and that's how you discharge your lipos. But believe it or not, I've got a lot of friends now who I fly with, and this hobby is so much better when you are flying with other people and traveling to different locations. And have a search on Facebook if you are struggling to find a local group, or use Google because you will always find somebody in your area, and it's awesome to fly and chat at the same time. But the difference when flying with others is that you don't know exactly how many batteries you'll get through. Often you can't all fly at the same time because of channel overlaps, and some people might not have smart audio or even know what channel that they're on. And also, anybody who knows me will confirm, let's say I'm a little bit chatty, so I always charge more lipos than I need, because you never know if one of your buddies will run out either, or if you have traveled, you could get to the location and it starts to rain because Google weather can't be trusted. So at the end of pretty much every flying session, I'm left with a few lipos fully charged, or sometimes all of them fully charged. Now, if I'm flying the next day, then it's fine to leave them fully charged overnight. They will certainly get a little bit damaged, but from the moment you buy a lipo, they are already degrading. Now, if you are new to the hobby, leaving a lipo fully charged for a long period of time will break down the internal chemistry of the battery, and this will increase the internal resistance, which in short will affect its overall performance, and you will also have a lot of energy stored in that lipo. So if it takes a fall, then it could get quite explosive, and you won't get as much life out of the battery either. Therefore, lipo companies recommend that to get the best life out of them, a storage voltage between 3.8 volts and 3.85 volts per cell will keep the chemistry of the lipo more together. But at the same time, a lipo does actually discharge itself on its own. So if you have left one for a long period of time storage charged, you might find that in a year's time that it's discharged itself too much. So if you are storing your lipos like this, then it's worth to check the voltage every once in a while, because if it's dropped below 3.3 volts, then at the other end of the scale, the chemistry can break down and the lipo either won't charge at all or will be too dangerous to charge and use. So with all that being said, most chargers have a storage function. I use the ISDT D2, and if I've flown a battery and landed at 14 volts, its storage mode will charge the lipo up to 3.8 volts per cell, and it can do this quickly because it can charge up to 12 amps. However, if the lipo is fully charged and I want to storage charge it, then it has to discharge the battery, and it does that by having a resistance. So unlike a quadcopter, the charger doesn't have four spinning motors and propellers drawing up to 140 amps. Instead, they usually use resistors, which are components like the ones on this Lipo Killer board, and the lipo is discharged in the form of heat. And sometimes these chargers will have a fan to cool down these resistors, and sometimes the fan is used as part of that resistance as well. But even this ISDT charger will only discharge at 0.3 amps, and my Lipos are 1500 milliamps. So to storage charge one of these Lipos from a fully charged battery, I need to take out about 700 milliamp, which at a discharge rate of 0.3 amps would take around about 2 hours and 20 minutes, and sometimes I've got 15 Lipos that I need to storage charge. And as for this Lipo Killer slash storage discharger, it doesn't have a rating on the listing of the website, but all I know is it takes just as long, if not longer, to get the Lipo to 3.8 volts per cell. Now, some of the other mid-range chargers, like the ISDT D2, can maybe discharge at an amp, but if you are loaded and have something like an iCharger or one of the Revo chargers, they can discharge up to 40 amps at a time, but those chargers can be like $300 or even more, and they usually require a separate power supply. And I just love the D2 charger because it plugs straight into the wall with no separate power supply needed, so there's no clutter, and it can still charge my Lipos really quickly. So if any of you guys know of a charger with a built-in power supply that's under $100 but can discharge at a very high rate, then let me know in the comments, because I'd be really interested to check that out, because I've done a search and I can't find one. But when I saw this FD-100 product at 27 GBP, it really caught my eye because it claims to discharge at 6 amps. And it's designed specifically to discharge fully charged Lipos to 3.8 volts per cell. So in theory, it should do this 1500 milliamp 4S Lipo in about 7 minutes, which is much better than 2.5 hours or so. It's really simple, which I like. In the box, we just have the manual and some stickers. You've also got some foam feet so that it doesn't slip if you want to put it on a desk. Your XT60 just goes in one end, but of course you can make adapters for other Lipo types. And it will take from a 2S up to an 8S Lipo, but it does warn you not to plug in anything more than that. We have just 2 buttons, and pressing either one of them will turn the device on, so plugging in a Lipo won't just power up, but of course it does power up from the Lipo. You then have a few seconds to choose your desired number of cells and current setting via the buttons, and this is indicated by these very dim LEDs, I must say, but usually when I'm discharging a Lipo, I'm indoors, so it doesn't matter so much that they are dim, and then it will start discharging. So the current discharge range goes from 0.5 amps up to 6 amps. Now with a 5-inch model in mind, which can be pulling up to 140 amps from a Lipo like this, a 6 amp discharge rate will be fine. And the same goes for most Lipos really. Even the small 2S Whoop Lipos are capable of drawing 12 to 20 amps. Just remember though that hooking those up with an adapter and running at 6 amps will heat them up more and potentially degrade the Lipo as much as a flight would. On the other hand, you could use a parallel board and do a few at the same time, and that would spread the load out, so you could do that. It does have protection as well, so it remembers the setting that you had last, and if you forget to change the setting when using a different battery, say a 3-cell, then it will beep at you and it won't take any further action until you have changed it to a 3-cell or whatever number of cells the battery you have plugged into has. On the other side, we've got a large fan, so yes, this isn't a silent solution. In fact, the manual says that it goes up to 80 dB, which is fairly loud. And you can see that we've also got a phono jack on this side, and that's for using with ISDT's SC linker, which is a USB device that you plug into a PC, and you can actually change the end voltage or recalibrate the device if it's not discharging to the correct voltage. You might notice one missing feature though, and that is the lack of a balance port, and I'm kind of on the fence about this because when you charge a Lipo, the initial charging process can take a matter of minutes, but then when it comes to balancing the individual cells, I've waited up to 20 minutes in the past for each cell to balance. So really, if the Lipo is balance charged correctly when it's charged in the first place, and we have discharged it with this device, but some of the cells aren't reading a similar value, then I'd start questioning the internal resistance of that cell before worrying about this device not having a balancing system. Though it's worth checking the cells after each Lipo has discharged just to make sure that there are no issues with the Lipo. There is actually a cheaper product than this called the AO Coder Salmeter 8, I think that's how you say it, and that is a silent solution. It uses bulbs to discharge the Lipo, and it balances the cells as well, but because of that I don't think that it's going to be as fast as this guy. So let's get a current meter attached to it and see how it performs. Okay, so I fully charged this GMB 1500 mAh 4S Lipo, and I've made sure that each one of the cells was reading 4.2 volts each. In fact, I took a photo of that, so I will overlay that now. We've got a current meter here, and it does some other functions as well, but I'm mainly interested to see whether we can get that 6 amps on the ISDT FD-100, and then I've got a stopwatch here as well. So I'm going to plug the battery in, make sure that we can see what is on the screen, and have the battery there in the background. Now that's interesting because I independently tested the voltage of this Lipo on various different meters, and it all came up as 16.8 volts, but this is saying 16.89, so maybe this meter is a little bit out. But I've got a stopwatch here, so I'm going to just press the button to turn it on, and it's saying 3S, so I'm going to select 4S there, and it started, so start the stopwatch. So let's see what happens with the current. So interestingly, just like a charger, it seems to start off low and it's sort of ramping up, and we should start to see the voltage drop. So yeah, it doesn't go straight to 6 amps, but we're getting close to an amp there. So one thing I've noticed is that when it got to 5 amps, it sort of stayed there. In fact, you see it's going down a little bit there. So I'm not sure whether this would actually bottleneck the system slightly by an amp. It could be possible, but 5 amps is still good enough. Let's see what happens. Oh, so the speed of the fan is changing. Let's see if the current draw changes. It's just changed again. It could be doing that just because it needs to be cooler. No, it's actually going up there. Stepping up a game. It's almost like it's got a program in to slowly go up to 6 amps. Doesn't just hit it straight away. The fan is getting ever increasingly louder. So we're 4 minutes in and it is slowly creeping up. The fan is very loud. I'm just going to feel how hot this is. It's getting pretty hot. I've got actually a temperature sensor, so we can see how hot it's getting. It's quite sensitive though, but I'm seeing 47 degrees, 48, 50, close to 50 anyways. It's sort of staying around the 5 amp mark. You can hear again the fan just gets ever increasingly louder. The fan's just stepped up one more. Let's check out the temperature. It's sort of hovering at 50 degrees C. Probably move it around. It's reading 50 over there. 51. It's hard to keep everything in focus. Around about 50 though. Not too bad. So I think I said that it should take about 7 minutes, but the fact that it had to ramp up means that it's going to take longer than that. Now this is sort of hovering around 5.3 amps. Could be that this is actually having an influence on that as well. I mean, the voltage wasn't accurate, so there's potential that this isn't quite accurate. Just noticed that the current is reducing and it looks like we are getting closer for this being completely storage charged, which is good, but it's ramping down rather than just a cut off. The fan has stayed at the same RPM though. Wonder what the temperature's doing. It's actually cooling down. Okay, the fan is definitely slowing down now. Oh, there's the beep. Stop. 11 minutes. I will take that over 2.5 hours any days. So what did that take out of it? I think I said 700 milliamp, didn't I? Is it going to tell me so? It's actually 800 there. Okay, let's unplug it and see what the individual cells are like. Okay, so I've actually got my ISDT field charger here. I'm just going to move that out of the way. So this is the Lipo that has just discharged, and then if I plug in, and we can look what the individual voltages are of each cell. Let's have a look. Hopefully I can get it to focus. Yep, so 3.82. Look at that. Absolutely perfect. To be fair, this is a fairly new battery. It's had about 10 cycles through it, but it was charged perfectly and it has discharged perfectly. Although we are just, you know, just a little point of a volt out, that is going to be absolutely fine. So I give this product a thumbs up. Still a little bit warm, but it never went over 50 degrees C. It's not burning me. So yeah, thumbs up, great product. And as always, thanks so much for watching. Please continue to subscribe. Cheers.